This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
The misuse and abuse of drugs and alcohol in our communities is staggering. The impact of addiction on this edition of inStudio. Drug and alcohol addiction destroys lives. In addition to ruining the lives of abusers and their families, it has widespread effects throughout our society. Why is this, and what's being done? These are some of the issues we will tackle with our panel of experts. We welcome to our roundtable discussion Clay Ingram. The Honorable Clay Ingram is a veteran legislator in the Florida House of Representatives serving District 1. He is the chair of the Transportation and Economic Development Appropriations Subcommittee and also serves on the Florida Defense Support Task Force and the Joint Legislative Budget Commission. He was elected president of the Pensacola Chamber of Commerce in 2014. Clay Ingram is a passionate community leader with a history of service to the people of Northwest Florida. Tamyra Jarvis was appointed as Director of Corrections for Escambia County, Florida in February of this year. Ms. Jarvis oversees the county jail, road, prison, and community corrections division. She monitors an annual budget of $46 million, coordinates a staff of 580, and oversees about 4,500 participants in community-based alternatives to incarceration programs, and also 1,700 pre-sentenced and sentenced individuals. Prior to her position here, Ms. Jarvis was with the Federal Bureau of Prisons in Coleman, Florida. She has had more than 25 years of distinguished service in corrections. Tommy Ratchford. Tommy has spent most of his life in Pensacola. He holds several degrees and graduated from the Florida State University College of Law in 1973. He served briefly as a U.S. Navy JAG, and in 1977 he opened his law practice at 314 South Balin Street. He specializes in criminal defense. For 40 years, Tommy Ratchford has tried hundreds of criminal jury trials concentrating on DUI defense. Twice a month, he co-hosts a television show on Blab concerning legal topics and is also a musician, a big part of the music scene in our viewing area. And Brunie Emmanuel, who has been involved with a variety of activities associated with the greater field of behavioral health since the time of the Vietnam War. He has started and been associated with a number of addictions-related organizations and most recently served Pathways for Change in several capacities for the past 4 years, including directing their men's residential treatment program located in the Escambia County Work Release Center. During that time, he wrote up a replication series to share with other counties. He's currently serving as a replication consultant to help make that happen. So in our show this evening, we're going to be discussing the legal, judicial, and regulatory issues surrounding addiction, that and so much more. So thank you all for being here. Apologize for all that talking, but you guys have so much wealth of knowledge that I want our viewers to know who is talking to them, whether they're watching tonight or whether they're watching later on the web. And so this is who you are. So tell us a little bit more about why you're here this evening. Clay, we asked you.
I'll start, and I want to thank WSRE and you, Sherri, and Brunie for thinking of me and inviting me here. It means a lot. I think from a very broad perspective, the issue of addiction, mental health, and the correction system, the way I in the legislature, you sort of get a focus, and my focus early on was transportation, tourism, and economic development, which is pretty far from mental health and addiction. But I'd been a teacher, and I was contacted by the superintendent of schools and then also by the commanding officer at the time of NAS Pensacola, who told me that his young sailors and the school superintendent and principals began to call me and tell me that their students were becoming addicted and couldn't stop taking or going and buying synthetic drugs, which were at the time were sold in gas stations. And so that was my introduction to how we need to get our minds and hands wrapped around this and begin to do something about that particular problem at that time, but then also addiction and mental health as a whole. So that was my introduction to it. We've done some things to curb that particular problem, to go after, and I think there was a thought at the time that particular drug was almost a safe alternative to some of the more hard drugs that we heard about, and they were not. I mean, it's chemicals sprayed on leaves that come from China. We have no idea what they are, and kids were taking it. It changed their brain chemistry. Some of the kids never really go back to who they were prior to taking those drugs, and so we specifically went after that problem. And then I think, again, that's sort of what introduced me to holistically looking at the problem, and it affects everything. It affects, I don't want to get into step on Tamyra's toes, but I mean, what we do there also, plays a role in jail populations and that sort of thing. So looking at the problem holistically is as important as going about trying to fix each of the individual points. And so that's sort of, I guess, how personally I was brought into trying to do something about addiction and mental health, and obviously the impact it has on the criminal justice system.
Well, and we'll get into some of those details a little bit more. And Tammy's here. She's only been here a few months, and you've inherited quite a big area to take care of. Tell us about how that's been going.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you and Brunie for coordinating and inviting me to be a part of the show today. Certainly, addiction plays a huge role in jail populations. I've seen in 25 years, corrections go from a lock them up, throw away the key perspective to more of a providing programs, rehabilitation, preparing offenders for reentry, and addiction counseling, addiction treatment, addressing what got these individuals into prison is paramount in keeping them out of prison and keeping them from coming back into our population. Certainly, community resources are always vying for the money and the resources that are available out there, and the ability to get individuals connected to what they really need to address their issues is a passion of mine.
Okay. Tommy.
Well, I too, Sherri, want to thank you for inviting me here. My major goal of being present is to try and explain the people that I deal with who suffer from addiction issues that gets them into the court system, and the difficulty that we have in trying to determine which direction to point them in, which direction their case should take. Clay has mentioned synthetic drugs. I hope we have a chance to talk about that, because those are really an evil thing. And she has mentioned the fight for resources within the community. What do we do with the money, and where is the money to do what needs to be done? So that's really my primary purpose here today, is to explain how the things that we're all going to be talking about affect an individual, such as the people that I deal with daily in the court system.
And you certainly see a lot of that, and certainly have for the last 40 years. So that's a valuable resource. We appreciate you being here. And I want to thank Brunie, because Brunie works in this field on a daily basis and has for so many years. And so I've relied heavily on him to get the right people together for these different shows. And I really appreciate that. So Brunie, you got involved a really long time ago. Addiction's a big problem.
Yeah, it is, and I mean, there's so many possible focuses for that. It's almost virtually uncountable. But what I hope we're able to focus on today is what's going on today, and where are we going. For example, Tammy's going to be in charge of the new jail. We can talk about that and how the various populations interact with that. There's medical marijuana's going on, and a lot of people are asking about that. There's a number of topics that I hope we'll be able to touch on. But then again, remember 211? we want to be able to help people connect with resources too, and the 211 is the way to do it.
I do have that graphic for later too. That is something that Brunie told many of us about we did not know about, which is simply if someone has a problem with addiction, whether it's a family member or any questions, that they can dial 211 and be put in touch with the proper individual. So we'll reiterate that a number of times, but we're glad that you're here and appreciate that. And in this first segment, we can get to all of these things that you all have mentioned. That's what we want to do. As far as I'm concerned, this is your show. This is the people's show. And so, Clay, you just came out of the legislative session. I know there are some other things on the docket, some really big things, but it's all big when you're dealing with people and individuals. So maybe give us an overview of what you came away with.
Sure. So I would say that one of the biggest things related to probably addiction this session, I made some notes too, so I didn't get too far off track, related to providing real, hard data for us to use as we try to make policy decisions for the state. One thing we had not tracked, surprisingly, was overdoses and mapped where they happen, how often they happen. And so we've worked with the healthcare providers, and then DCF is contracting with some entities to go out and actually get a handle on where overdoses are happening. And obviously we'd love to have drug abuse not get to the point where there's an overdose, but it happens and can happen quickly. It doesn't have to be a long-term drug user that overdoses. And so that was something that we hope will start to, again, provide some hard data for us to make policy decisions on. Big picture wise, though, last session, the 2016 session, we adopted a bill, Senate Bill 12, I believe, and it was, I was talking to Brunie earlier, healthcare related to mental health has traditionally been sort of doled out in silos. And so when you entered the healthcare system or entered the mental health system, if you didn't come into the right silo or the right doorway, you were sort of left out in the cold, or maybe you wouldn't get the help you need. And so the bill in 2016, that's still in the process of being implemented. We have some data that'll be coming back in June, late June, to see if it's effective. But tears down those walls and those silo doors. And so it's a sort of, there's a phrase, I tried to take note of how we phrased it, no wrong door system. And so if you come into the system, the intent is to get you the help you need from the right provider. And I think that will make a big difference. Again, it will take time to see it to kick in, but I think it was a sea change in how we do business related to mental health care. So I'm excited about seeing that take effect.
Okay, so from that to jails, it comes from the state down to the county. We're about to take a break, but would you like to touch on kind of what you've inherited before we take that first break?
Well, what I've inherited was a loss of over 700 beds when we lost the central booking and detention area in 2014, which has resulted in us having to spread our population out to different locations. And right now we're in the process of, getting things moving forward on constructing the new jail so that we can bring the individuals back to Escambia County.
Okay, and we're going to touch much more on that. We also want to talk about the proposed new jail. We want to talk about the medical marijuana issue a little bit. But when we return, we'll continue our discussion of the societal implications of addiction, a little bit more on the medical marijuana issue as well. You're watching In Studio on WSRE. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching In Studio. Our topic, the many aspects of addiction and how it affects our society. Thank you to our panel for being here. Appreciate it very much. We were touching on the topic of medical marijuana because people hear addiction and then they hear marijuana and it gets all kind of like this. And so it's tough to break it down, but it's really not. You just came out of a legislative session that discussed that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so going back to November, there was a ballot initiative that put medical marijuana, it legalized it essentially in the state of Florida. It gave the legislature a certain amount of time to write rules to accompany the ballot initiative, and they were very vague. We just have to come up with rules to deal with how the law would be implemented. And the House and Senate both passed bills that created those rules, but there was a conflict relating to how many dispensaries would be allowed per grower. And so we thought we had a compromise, but the House voted on a certain measure. I think we allowed 100 dispensaries per grower, and the Senate rejected that. So the bill essentially fell apart, and there was no bill passed related to medical marijuana this year, or the rule implementation. The Department of Health could do that. They could write the rules. I think it's widely seen that the people would rather the elected body create the rules rather than the Department of Health, and that they were very slow in creating rules related to Charlotte's Web, which was the non-euphoric strain that was legalized a couple of years ago. So I predict, and this may, by the time the show airs, may have happened or not happened, but there will be a special session related to medical marijuana. I think it's very likely, and we would create those rules. And I think in the vacuum of a special session, it's more likely to happen without the normal politics don't apply. So that'd be my prediction for what that's worth. Is that we'll go back and do that.
Absolutely. Your thoughts on the issue? How's it? People that are, do you have any thoughts on the medical marijuana issue at all?
I really haven't seen a lot of research on it. From the things that I have read, I believe there's a place for it to be controlled, to provide the utilization where it's deemed medically necessary.
Mm-hmm. And probably, hopefully won't have any effect on jails or anything on that level, because it's a totally separate issue, really. What are your thoughts?
Well, Sherri, I could talk about marijuana for hours. As a rock musician as a kid, I was exposed to it, and I know a lot of people that have used it for their entire lives and who've never gotten in trouble as a result of it. It's basically a benign drug. The arguments have always been it leads to harder drugs, but again, I've known people that have used it for years and have no desire to use hard drugs. I've studied the history of it. It goes back to Singer, who was a prosecutor in New York back in the 20s. And the truth is the marijuana laws were really a racial matter, because the people that were using marijuana back in the 20s were jazz musicians, most of whom were black. And this was a movement beginning in New York with Singer to quell and put a stop to that activity, really by only that segment of the population. The federal laws that we have now that classify marijuana along with hard drugs all came out of the 20s, and to a large extent, society's attitude was pigeonholed as a result of that movie, Reefer Madness. And if you've never watched it, I invite folks out there to Google it and watch Reefer Madness. It's really an absurd thing, but in those days, people being so influenced by what they see on a screen is really the basis for where we are today. And I'm glad to see that there's a more enlightened look at it. But of course, medical marijuana, there's two categories, as Clay pointed out. There's the category of the Charlotte's Web, which is non-euphoric. People don't get high, but it serves a purpose. And also, though, the euphoric marijuana that helps people get high in and of itself also has a medical purpose, especially for those who have to take medication that forbids them from being able to keep their food down. So marijuana helps calm the stomach, and it's a great has a great medical purpose in that respect.
Boy, I've never heard that story before. So in other words, it seems to me that as society becomes more educated, learning more and more about it, we've got so much more ahead of us in terms of where we're going with the whole issue.
I defer to the expert on that.
Yeah.
Well, I've been involved in treating people with addiction to a lot of substances, and to me right now the issue is not about pot, it's about what's happening as far as the reality of the population of those who are addicted and also have mental health diagnoses.
Right.
That's where the real complication is getting to be, and Tammy's the one who's having to deal with that.
Right.
I mean, the county jails and the state prisons have become the de facto #1 mental health facility in our state, and I can't imagine the story she sees every day and how she has to deal with that reality. As far as recreational marijuana, that may just complexify that. Mm-hmm. Medical marijuana, the non-euphoric use for medical conditions, is sort of a different thing from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, Sherri, if you don't mind, something Tommy brought up that I think this is a hope that a lot of us have, is that we have an opioid crisis in Florida. A lot of people get addicted to opioids, not through any nefarious activity, but after surgery or just they were prescribed the medicines and then they become addicted. But I think there's a hope that the medical use that Brunie pointed out would quell that perhaps, and if that's a side effect of the legalization of medical marijuana, that would be a great thing.
Well, and opioids help some people that literally, would not have quality of life without them.
That's absolutely so, but the complication is, Sherri and viewers, is that it can lead to its own addiction, and then the pain, the injury becomes secondary, and it's dealing with the pain of the addictive cycle that gets to be the issue. That's one of the hardest parts of medicine, in my opinion, to deal with, is pain management.
The new county jail, the proposed county jail. We want to talk about that because Brunie's mentioned it a few times. What's going on there?
Well, currently the request for purchase was provided to the three pre-qualified firms for them to provide a response to. That's due by June the 23rd. The Board of County Commissioners is going to hear a presentation from each of those firms who provide a response August 8th and August 9th. And at some point after that, they'll make a decision on the selection. The graphic that I provided to you regarding the design of the new jail was what was provided to the design entities in the design proposal packages. It's strictly conceptual in that it just provides a starting point for them to then come up with their own design to meet the intended use of the facility and our intended functionality, so that they can then use their own innovation and creativity to come up with a design that meets our intended functionality.
And why should the average viewer or listener care about the jail and what's going on in this area with that?
Well, because of the fact that, first of all, at this point we're having to send a lot of our citizens who are incarcerated to a lot of, spread them out a little bit. We have individuals right now in Walton County. We have individuals that we're housing at our work release center. And then we have individuals that we're housing at our main jail because we just simply don't have the space at the main jail to house all of our clientele at this point. And certainly the new jail will provide us relief in that area to bring everybody back into the county where we can manage them. They're our responsibility. We should have them here. And that is the long-term goal, is to get them back. We're continually, since I've been here, been looking at a variety of options to bring these individuals back to Escambia County. We previously, when I first got here, had some individuals housed at the Santa Rosa County Jail. We were able to rework the space at our work release center and get those individuals brought back. But we still have about 280 at Walton County right now.
Gosh, an ongoing situation. Brunie, you have some thoughts on this, I'm sure.
Well, it's so costly. You know,
Hundreds of thousands a month.
Yeah, and so the use of alternative sanctions on the front end of crime becomes, to me, something that we need to look at. If somebody is arrested for a nonviolent, drug-related possession type offense, do they need to go through the whole booking, processing, criminal record process as opposed to what's being tried in some areas? And this legislature has discussed having more like a civil citation, or it's almost like a ticket, and as long as you do the sanctions, you're able to avoid that whole thing. And viewers may not be aware, but that record can really affect you 20 years later when you're wanting to have a job. And so I think there are other things that we can, and I think will do, as we're moving forward. And one of the contentious issues is going to be our Attorney General, Jeff Sessions' mandate that federal prosecutors prosecute the most serious crime that has just occurred. So there's a lot of debate and conversation that's going to be going on about that.
Mm-hmm. And where are we with it right now, Tommy?
Well, you know, Brunie mentions records. And one of the things that has evolved since the beginning of my days as a lawyer here in the state of Florida and probably throughout the country is mandatory minimum sentences and mandatory adjudication of guilt. Folks don't really understand what that means, but in Florida, unless you are adjudicated guilty, you're not really convicted. And if adjudication of guilt is withheld, a person can get that offense removed from their record through an expungement or sealing process after a while. But there are some crimes, and some of them are in the drug-related field, where adjudication of guilt is mandatory. And once you're adjudicated guilty, that stain is on your record forever. DUI has a mandatory adjudication. So a person picking up a DUI at age 19, being foolish out at the beach chasing girls, who has too much to drink and gets convicted, that's going to follow him the rest of his days. And I've always believed there should be a way that first-time offenders, after showing rehabilitation, after a period of time of no additional crimes, no referrals for drug abuse, should be able to get that stain removed from their record so it doesn't affect them when they're 25 and 26 and now they're married and got a kid and they're trying to get a decent job.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, that's a big one. And people grow up, don't they?
Yes.
Well, you're watching inStudio on WSRE TV, PBS for the Gulf Coast. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion on addiction in our society. We'll focus a little bit more on the new jail for Escambia County and much more. Stay right here.
Unlock your newest member benefit. Over 1,000 episodes of your favorite PBS shows. American Masters, Antiques Roadshow, Nature, Nova, Masterpiece. Watch the best of PBS anytime, anywhere. Become a member, sign in, and start streaming today.
This is inStudio on WSRE TV. We're talking the societal implications of addiction. Our panel includes experts that are working daily in this field. And we've talked about the jail. We've talked about some of the different issues with addiction. But I think what I'm hearing, and I think what people that are watching probably have no idea about, are the alternative sanctions that could reduce the jail population and how the legislature could help with that and how it could help with the individuals. And so I'd like to continue our discussion of that. You were mentioning that with all of the inmates that are supposed to be in the Escambia County Jail that are in Walton County and Okaloosa, there's a lot of travel and extra money involved. I mean, this sounds kind of, wow.
It takes a lot of coordination. It takes a lot of manpower. It is costly. Santa Rosa and Walton County have been great partners to us through this. I mean, we were really in a bind when we lost central booking and detention. When you lose that many beds, you have to find a place to put these individuals.
And this was due to the flooding.
Yes, and the explosion. And so, you know, they've been a great partner to us, but it's very costly to the county. The transporting back and forth, we've done everything that we can to minimize the number of trips that we have to make back and forth. We try not to send individuals to Walton County prior to their first appearance, and we try to send, you know, focus more on our sentenced inmates so that it's not individuals that we have to be bringing back for court, but that's not always possible. So there is a lot of movement going on right now.
It's just incredible to think about. And are you even hearing some things?
Yeah, I'll say this. I was struck by something that Brunie said earlier, and then Tommy's take on it. You know, I would say that my political stance is a tough on crime stance. But you know, when you hear the, you know, kind of what's been brought up, and the reason I think some of this smart justice, I think, is the sort of global phraseology we use in the legislature. The reason it has a chance is because of the economic argument, and obviously there's the personal toll that this takes on individuals. But you know, if you're a first-time offender of whatever nature, as long as it's not a violent, you know, hurtful crime to someone else. You know, once you're caught in that system, you know, it's a downward spiral, and the amount of time it takes to comply. I mean, Tommy, I can't imagine you deal with it every day, but the amount of time it takes to comply, and just again, once you're in the court system, and it doesn't get better. And then I think we've talked about the tag follows you the rest of your life. And so, if there's a way to keep someone viable, you know, to have a job and a career to support themselves, their families. That economic argument can trump a lot, I think, and that's why I think this has a chance to you know, gain traction and become law eventually.
And I'm very fortunate that during the time I was writing up the replication series, I was able to look at a lot of different research from a lot of different sources. And the factors that make for public safety are not the lock 'em up kind of factors. They're the factors like appropriate reentry services and employment. Those are the two biggies. So if somebody comes out of prison, if we can give them good reentry services and if we can help them get a job, their likelihood of going back diminishes hugely, if that's a word. And then the ripple effect is with their children. The children of people whose fathers are incarcerated is like 4 times the frequency of arrest and incarceration than the population at large. And so it just makes sense as far as both the economics that you're talking about and public safety that we have alternative sanctions on the front end to not put people into that system that don't need to be there, and that we have services on the back end to help them integrate in a way where they don't go back.
And some of the numbers I've seen, Sherri, are phenomenal as far as, you know, once someone's been in the, you know, reentry program or in some of the established programs, they essentially do not reoffend.
That's right.
You know, alcohol and drugs, addiction or not addiction, certainly fuel the criminal justice system. A great number, in fact, a vast majority of crimes, people that commit crimes are motivated by drugs, either because they're addicted and they're stealing the drugs, or they're stealing from cars to get the money to buy the drugs. You know, one thing in the field of DUI, not everyone who gets arrested for DUI has a drinking problem. And not everyone who gets arrested for DUI is there for alcohol use. Pharmaceutical drugs make you just as dangerous on the highway. And we have mandatory minimum sentences, as you know, Mr. Ingram, depending upon your prior experience with DUI. But one good thing that the legislature has done, it provides that if a person is looking at a jail sentence on a DUI case, that if they participate as an inpatient in a treatment program, that the judge is required to give them credit day-for-day credit against any potential jail sentence. So if a guy's looking at 60 days for a second offense DUI, for instance, if he does 28 or 30 days in Pathways for Change or one of the other treatment programs that we have available here, then the judge will subtract those days from that 60-day jail sentence. And in many cases, the judge will suspend the remainder. As long as you don't drink, as long as you don't get in trouble, as long as your urine tests are clean while you're on probation, you never have to serve the rest of it, because the judges realize treatment goes to the root of the problem, as opposed to jail simply as a Band-Aid and doesn't treat the root problem.
Well, what kinds of community corrections programs are offered for our county right now, and how do we get that out to more people?
Well, what we have is we currently have pretrial diversion, we have pretrial release, check diversion, we have work release, we have electronic monitoring, we have misdemeanor probation. Those are all court-ordered programs and are available to individuals when they get arrested and once they're convicted. One of the points that Tommy made about the addiction possibly leading to crime, well, also mental health issues lead to crime. You know, and addressing those issues, when you see those individuals coming in, is we try to identify those individuals when they get into the system, whether it be for addiction or mental health, so that upon their release or upon them even going to court, we can make assessments and provide that information to the judges in sentencing so that they can get these individuals, court order these individuals where they really need to go versus the incarceration.
Mm-hmm. And what about the percentage of people that are in the jail currently that are addicted to substances? What does that look like?
About 85%.
Wow, that's incredible.
Some sort of addiction, yes.
And while they're there, what is done for them in terms of the addiction?
Well, you know, one point I definitely want to be made is that the average length of stay in the Escambia County Jail is 39 days. That's what our average is. So what we do is detox them, get them through the detox, let them know. We provide assessments as far as to make a determination on what their needs are, what their addiction problems are, what their mental health issues are, so that we can get them connected with the appropriate community resources upon their release. And that's our primary role. Now, certainly if they end up getting sentenced to one of our alternatives to incarcerations through our community corrections programs, we continue there then to work with them. We have a forensic mental health specialist there who monitors them, who assists them with, again, connecting to the community resources, to getting them into the programs, to monitoring their progress, monitoring their compliance with all of their conditions of whether it be probation, to ensure that they're meeting their side of things, or what is leading to them not being able to comply, because sometimes there's issues with that, such as transportation. Employment issues has, you know, because of them being incarcerated, has now been impacted. They've lost their job. Issues such as that begin to erupt.
Well, you mentioned something during a break about what you've said to people that have been involved in jail. Share that with us.
Yeah. Well, that, you know, I've always told them, whatever you're in here for and whatever time you've done, when you walk out of here, you need to try to put that behind you and not make this a life sentence for yourself. Don't continue to, first of all, participate in the type of behavior that got you in here, but additionally, learn from it, grow from it. You've served your time now, and you need to get out, and you need to start fresh. The problem, though, that they often encounter is that society won't let them put it behind them.
And what do we need to do as a society to help change that? There's not a person at this table that doesn't want to see everybody feeling good, everybody not addicted, everybody not being arrested, everybody not going to jail, needing the laws. So, I mean, it's a big, tall order. How do we how do we do that? We're addressing it as best we can right now, it sounds.
Well, I think that, first of all, more programs being available when they are released to help to ensure their success upon the release. Employers being more open to hiring individuals who have a record. Treatment facilities being more accepting of individuals who are coming out of jail or prison. Because there are treatment providers out there who don't want ex-offenders.
Right.
So,
Tommy, I imagine this.
I encounter that too, Sherri. People come into me and say, Mr. Ratchford, if I'm convicted of this, I'm going to lose my job. And I have to ask this question, well, you're going to lose your job because your employer thinks you're going to be in jail and you can't get there? Or simply your employer doesn't want to employ someone who's been convicted of this offense that you're charged with? Because those are two totally different things. I want to back up Brunie when he says that Tammy's the one with the biggest problem, because the jail is the clearinghouse. People end up there from all walks of life. You have homeless, you have mentally ill people, you have folks that are addicted to drugs and alcohol, and that's the clearinghouse. They're the ones that had the biggest problem. And it all boils down to money, and we all know that. As Tammy says, we need the programs post-jail when you get out, something that will help you find a job. I know our federal judge has implemented a program for federal prisoners. I know that Brunie and Pathways for Change and some of the other programs he works with have a reentry aspect to it. They try to help folks find jobs. Do y'all have a list of employers that have made it known to you that we're able to hire these people? But the truth is, most of those are menial type jobs, right, Brunie?
Right. And a living wage and minimum wage are not the same thing.
Exactly. Exactly.
even housing. Some individuals, when you fill out the application to rent an apartment, if you have a criminal record, they won't rent to you.
And see, that was a political move made some time ago locally here to prohibit people from living in certain projects because they have a criminal record. Well, so where are they going to live? They end up living under the interstate. They become homeless. That's what they become. And they're the folks you see on the street corners with the sign. I don't really know what the answer is, Sherri, because, you know, I saw a poster in front of the Elks Lodge. We're for a drug-free America. We can't have a drug-free America. I like my Novocaine when I go to the dentist. You know, drugs are a part of our society. We just, how to control them better, how to keep them out of the hands that are going to misuse them. I'm not really sure that we know what that answer is. It's something that goes much deeper than just the surface of the table, as to try and say, well, don't use drugs, just say no. It's not quite that simple.
Isn't that the truth? And we've certainly discussed that on inStudio, and we'll touch on that a little bit more in just a few minutes. We're going to take a break. You're watching inStudio on WSRE TV, PBS for the Gulf Coast. We'll continue with our topic and how it affects everyone. We'll be back right after this.
WSRE is celebrating 50 years, and the PBS show that put local kids inspired to make a difference in the national spotlight. In the 2000s, Zoom motivated 6 to 11-year-olds to investigate, create, and problem solve. It was television by, for, and about children, and empowered them to be more. Once engaged, they volunteered, teamed up, and gave back. Zoom connected kids with each other and their communities for 7 seasons. Their projects and fundraisers collected countless dollars and changed lives. Their stories, produced by WSRE as Zoom into Action segments, went national. Children from across Northwest Florida didn't just watch the program, they were on it from coast to coast. That's pioneering children's television, and just one reason we're celebrating 50 years.
Welcome back. This is In Studio. Our guests this evening, all experts in dealing with the societal implications of addictions, all seeking to help others in our community and to help us understand more about addictions and how we are all affected by this crippling disease. And we want to make sure that we've covered all the topics that we wanted to get out there about some of the different challenges and everything. But that 85% addiction rate in the jail, that's staggering. Tommy was mentioning when the county jail blew up, what had happened there, which leads into to some other directives that could be extremely effective. What was that, Ewer?
Well, one thing the point I wanted to make here today is I'm glad to see that our local policymakers are moving on with getting a new jail built, Tammy, the place that you're going to run. You know, I've in my years practicing law, I started at the old jail, which is now the Sheriff's Department, which was under federal mandate to clean up. In fact, my associate attorney, Elton Killam, helped do that and get that mandate. Then they built CBD, the Central Booking and Detention, out of the old University Hospital, and we were all pleased to see that was moving on. Then it exploded, it blew up, and then we had the controversy of where we're going to put a new one. Well, I'm glad they decided not to put it back there because floods have historically been, you know, University Hospital basement got flooded back in the 60s. Everybody knew that was a floodplain. So at least I'm glad to see we're moving on with something, we're making progress, and where we finally decided where we're going to build it. The money's coming. The contractors, as you say, are going to be making their bids. And then I look at Santa Rosa County, where they can't even decide where to build their new courthouse. So they're faced and stuck with a building that's antiquated and inadequate. At least we're moving forward. I don't know if we'll ever be able to eliminate drug addiction in this country because of the nature of it and why people use them. But as we get them into the jail system, into the criminal justice system, and we're able to farm them out to treatment programs, at least the idea is we can cure this one at this point in time, this one at that point in time, and hope they won't come back. But there will always be others coming, and I think that's just inevitable in an open society.
Well, and I believe in a situation like this, you really have to rejoice in your small successes.
Right.
If you just touch one individual, you've changed a life, and in corrections, that's a lot of times what we have to break it down to in order to keep ourselves motivated. Really, is just being able to touch one person and make a difference in one person's life, to recognize that you have done something important there.
I imagine, Clay, that is when you think that you're making this policy and that it comes down to individuals. I imagine that's something very important that you have in the front of your mind all the time.
It is, absolutely. I think that helps with any policy, but especially something that's so personal like addiction and mental health, is that to actually, and we have constituent calls, and this is, I guess, a point of pride for you that I had a call from a couple of parents in South Carolina. Their son was here, had a drug addiction problem, and had been in and out of mental health facilities, and they were almost relieved to know that he had been arrested, and then through Lakeview Center was going to get some attention. And so, I guess again, to brag on what you do, that you are making a difference in individual lives. That's a big thing. And Sherri, just to sort of, I guess, kind of give my perspective on how overwhelming this seems. I guess when you have a cold or flu and you're congested and you have a fever, it almost seems overwhelming to try to get better. But if you treat the congestion with a decongestant and you treat the fever with Tylenol or whatever, when you treat the individual problems, you start to feel better and it starts to allow your body to heal. I sort of think that that's how I feel about this what we've discussed here today, is that if you let yourself get overwhelmed with it, there's no way in sight to actually try to fix it. But if you look at the individual programs that are working and all the people trying to make a difference and see their effects start to add up, I think that it gives you the sense that if we all keep working, keep attention on this. I was telling you, I think during the break, that 10 years ago when I was running for office, this wasn't discussed. I mean, the thought was if somebody was committing a crime, you put them in jail. It's where they stay. But now that we look at addiction and mental health as a component, it opens the door for some good things to happen. So anyway, I don't want to walk away feeling that there's no hope, because there is.
That's very encouraging.
There absolutely is. And, especially being new to Escambia County, I've lived in a lot of different counties, a lot of different states. And what is going on here is something that this community should be very proud of. There are steps being made. There is progress being made. I don't know if it's because I'm new here, but I am constantly approached by individuals who want to talk to me about what can we do as a community, what additional programs do you see. You inviting me to something like this just shows that the community is wanting to push things forward. And a way that I typically approach this is to say things didn't get this way overnight, and they're not going to change overnight. We need to just take baby steps, and eventually we will see the fruit of all the efforts of everybody collaborating and working together.
And that's what Clay just said, and I love that. And Brunie, certainly every single day you are helping people to reacclimate, and now you're going to take that into other counties as well.
Lord
Tell
willing.
us about that.
Well, I'd prefer not to be talking about replication too much right now. What I would like to do is follow up on what y'all were saying, though. So from a systemic point of view, from you as a legislator and you as a county person, there's improvement strategies in place, and they're working. In the core of what's at the heart of mental health and substance abuse issues, that trauma or that something dark and broken, as you quoted earlier, the therapeutic processes to help ameliorate both the symptoms and the core of those issues is getting better and better. We're getting better in knowing how to treat mental health and substance abuse issues. And so from a systems point of view, things are improving, but right there in the core where that person is, we're getting better at it too.
And you would agree with that, Tommy?
Brunie Emmanuel is a hero to me, and what he's done for the people of this community and the things that he continues to do and that he's got plans for in the future are wonderful. And I'm going to do everything I can, and I hope that the legislature will do everything it can, and the jail facility will do everything they can to help Brunie meet his goals, because he's the guy that's got the key to figuring this out.
You're going to talk about those replication services some other times, but we've got about 5 minutes. You want to share how working with individuals helps people get back into their normal lives?
Well, it's essential. If you were raised in a home that has trauma, unresolved trauma in it, you are going to manifest that. It's just the way that it is, and people do not understand that something happening traumatically to my father is going to genetically affect me. If he didn't deal with it, I will have to. And we're understanding those dynamics, and we're getting more effective at treating and resolving them. But again, I would say that's a microcosm of the greater macrocosm of our community. We don't have improved public safety by locking everybody away. That's right. We have more public safety by those people having a living wage job and the kind of family system that we all need.
And do you see us making strides in that area?
I see us making strides. One of the things we have not mentioned, but the Escambia County Drug Court has been essential in helping people who commit minor crimes or drug offenses, nonviolent offenses, get back into society. If you've never had an opportunity to watch it, I urge you, Sherri, go down to the courthouse. I think it's Thursday mornings, Brunie, is that when it is?
Yeah.
At 7 o'clock when drug court meets, and watch the dynamics. The judge doesn't wear the black robe. The judge gets up there in his street clothes, and he talks to these people on a first-name basis and lets them know he or she is really concerned in helping them overcome their drug problem, get back on their feet, put their family back together, and be productive. So I know we're making strides, but as Tammy pointed out, right now they're just baby steps. But a whole bunch of baby steps, you can make a mile.
Well, that drug court is awesome. And you were talking about people that have committed minor offenses having these stains for life. I just wonder if there's an employer out there that can say that they've never had a stain in their own life. And so I think that's why it behooves everyone to work together to try to help everyone as human beings. That's just, I'm not the expert here, but that's just what I have to say. Conclusive thoughts?
Just, I'm happy to be in Escambia County. I feel very fortunate to be in the position I am in as the Director of Corrections, and I look forward to just seeing what the future holds with Escambia County, with the new jail, with the growth of reentry programs, with the expansion of various courts like the drug court and veterans court. I know that we can continue to expand and provide additional opportunities for individuals that are alternatives to incarceration versus locking them up.
Clay?
Yeah, I'm happy to have Nelson. Of course, I've known Brunie for a while and happy to have had him as a resource, but now, to be able to pick Tommy's brain when we're making these big policy decisions and talk to Tammy, I'm glad we had this opportunity to talk. I think that it'll make a big difference. I mean, actually, this conversation, I think, will help us going forward.
Brunie?
Well, thanks to you. You're the one who made it happen.
Wow.
And I wish I had John Parnham here to be able to pat him on the back for that whole.
He created our drug court. In fact, our drug court is a model for other drug courts across the state.
Wow.
People, in fact, in other parts of the country.
That's right.
We've had folks come from all over the place to come and watch Judge Parnham do his drug court thing. Judge Nickinson, I think, is doing it now, and he's probably the best judge we could have for that particular thing. Judge Nickinson is a peach of a judge. He's a great guy.
I thought he was a banjo player.
Well, he is that too. That's us musicians. So,
Got to stick together, yeah.
but the fact is,
that's awesome.
we're making progress, and it's good to know that Tammy's door is going to be open to the legislature, to Brunie, and to guys like me to voice our concerns, to express what we think we need, and to do our best to try and find the money to be able to implement it.
Well, as we said, 10 years ago, we wouldn't have had this conversation, and it took each one of you taking time out of your schedules to be here, and I want to thank each and every one of you for doing that and helping to enlighten us on the societal issues surrounding addiction. Clay Ingram, Tamyra Jarvis, Tommy Ratchford, and Brunie Emmanuel. Thank you for all that you did, and thank you for your continued service, and I hope you'll stay in touch so that we can keep our viewers up to date on all of this. Be sure to look for further educational materials so that you can recognize the signs of addiction and know where to go for help. It's also important to support all of the good people working to assist those individuals and families dealing with addictions. There are many community resources available. We mentioned it earlier. If you or someone you know needs help with addiction, please take action for the good of yourselves and our society. Want to remind you that you can simply dial 211 for immediate assistance. Here, all the relevant substance abuse and mental health providers are available. Addiction is a local and national problem, but there are pathways for hope, and hopefully real change is on the horizon. I trust that you've enjoyed our discussion this evening and learned something important from this broadcast. I'm Sherri Hemminghaus Weeks. I'll see you on a future edition of InStudio and also on my other show on WSRE. It's called In Your Own Backyard. In it, we take you to many interesting and varied places and share with you many amazing sights and scenes along the Great Gulf Coast. I sincerely hope you'll join us. Until then, take care.